In this video, I'm going to cover Meditations 1 and Meditations 2 from Rene Descartes' book, Meditations on First Philosophy. I'm going to discuss the dream argument, the evil demon argument, I think therefore I am, and the wax argument. We're going to do that in order. That's the order in which it's in the book. When you're studying Rene Descartes, you might be in a philosophy class. You might also be in a mathematician's course or in an optometrist's course, and that's because Rene Descartes was not only a philosopher, he was also a scientist, a mathematician. He made discoveries like the XY axis that lets you plot things in geometry and all that sorts of stuff. Like, he came up with that. Also, he made discoveries about the rainbow and refraction. Refraction is a super cool thing. I'm only talking about Rene Descartes insofar as he was a philosopher. In his book, Meditations on First Philosophy, he asks questions like, how do you know that something is true? How do you have knowledge? What is knowable? What is the source of knowledge? And he asks a bunch of questions, and he does give answers. So yes, there's a thing called Cartesian Skepticism. It's when you are inquiring into things that other people believe there is an answer to, but you're still asking questions. There is a whole branch of skepticism named after Rene Descartes, Cartesian Skepticism. But he was not himself a skeptic, and so he's only asking questions so that he can come up with the answers. So even though when you're learning about skepticism, you're going to find Rene Descartes' name, do not assume he was a skeptic. He is not a skeptic. He is going to draw conclusions that he believes are undoubtable. He is going to stop inquiring into certain things. So he is not himself a skeptic. All right, let's start with the first meditations. It begins like this. Several years have now passed since I first realized how numerous were the false opinions that in my youth I had taken to be true, and thus how doubtful were all those that I had subsequently built upon them. In other words, he's saying that he realized a while ago that when he was super young, he had a lot of false beliefs. And in his growing up, he took those false beliefs thinking that they were true beliefs and then added beliefs on top of them. Like, for example, imagine that you think that your grandma is a great source of knowledge, so you trust your grandma. And then your grandma tells you things, so you obviously believe the things she tells you. She tells you that there's a Santa Claus. She tells you that there's a tooth fairy. So now you're over here believing that you have to be good in order to get a gift from Santa Claus, and that's all because it came from this source that you thought was good, but it isn't good. And what he's saying is that he wants to not believe false things. Earnestly and unreservedly, I am going to demolish my opinions. I should withhold my assent no less carefully from opinions that are not completely certain and undoubtable than I would from those that are patently false. What he's going to do is try to empty his brain of all of his thoughts. The true beliefs and the false beliefs all have to go so that he can start from scratch and only re-believe all the things that are true. He gives in a different book this example of someone with a basket of apples. There's rotten beliefs, there's rotten apples, there's good beliefs, there's good apples in your mind in this basket. And you're going to need to dump out all of the apples from the basket and then just put the good ones back in. He's going to want to dump out all of the beliefs from his head and then just put the true beliefs back in. So that's his goal. The meditations is going to be him trying to do that. So that's the plan for the meditations. All right, we start with this idea that there is sources of knowledge. And then we're wondering, what are the sources of knowledge? What is a reliable source of knowledge? By the way, he thinks once someone lies to you, you can never trust them again. So once a source of information proves untrustable, you can't trust anything from that source ever again. So once you find out that your grandma lied to you once, you can no longer believe anything she says. Once you buy a rotten apple from a market once, you can never go to buy apples from that market again. So he's saying, okay, let's question all of the sources of information that we have, and he comes up with two groups. One group from which you get information in your mind are your senses. And this is not just one thing, it's a collection of things, because you have your visual perception, that's a source of potential knowledge, the things you see, like you see people, right? You have your auditory perception, you have your olfactory perception, you have your gustatory perception. All of these are senses. There's things you taste, there's things you hear, there's things you see, there's things you touch. Common sense, these are your senses. There's this whole group of things that can give you beliefs. There's also rationality, or the intellect. You have your mind. You can think of things and deduce things. Like when you think about an unmarried male, you come to the idea that that's what a bachelor is. A bachelor is an unmarried male. When you think about the number 2, you realize that if you put 2 of them together, you get the number 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. And you don't need to make observations in the empirical world to realize that 2 plus 2 is 4, because you can do that in your mind with pure intellect. So Rene Descartes gets these 2 sources of knowledge, the rationality or intellect as one, and the observations or the common sense as another. And as he goes on meditating, he realizes he can't trust common sense. The dream argument is what Rene Descartes gives us to show us that we cannot rely on common sense for knowledge. Then there's also the evil demon argument. Rene Descartes gives us the evil demon argument to show us that we cannot rely on rationality or reason or the intellect for knowledge either. So those 2 arguments, the evil demon argument as well as the dream argument, are going to be what is going to help us realize that we can't actually trust the common sense or our intellect. Let's look at both of those one by one. So the first thing he's going to give us is the dream argument. Well, first he's like, wait a minute. I know I'm sitting here, so like there's reasons to believe that I'm sitting here. How could I doubt that I'm sitting here? Then he says, this would all be well and good were I not a man who is accustomed to sleeping at night and to experiencing in my dreams the very same things, or now and then even less plausible ones, as insane people do when they are awake. I see so plainly that there are no definite signs by which to distinguish being awake from being asleep. And I did skip a bunch of sentences. But the basic point in his dream argument is this: that wake perceptions are like dream perceptions. The things you perceive and see and observe while you're dreaming look a lot like the things that you see and observe and perceive when you're sleeping. Have you ever had a dream that you went to school? Have you ever gone to school? Okay, when you're at school, how do you know that you're actually at school? How do you know you're not currently having a dream that you are at school? So there's 2 main points here. One is that the things you observe when you're awake are really similar to the things you observe when you're sleeping. And then the second point is that there's no sure sign on how to differentiate your wake beliefs from your dream beliefs. And then the conclusion is that you could be dreaming right now. If you're dreaming right now, then this is not reality. So you can have false perceptions. This dream argument is supposed to make you question and reject the idea that common sense or your senses can be a reliable source of knowledge. And that's pretty much it. Then he moves on to the idea that the intellect is a reliable source of knowledge, and he gives the evil demon argument to show that you can't trust your intellect either. The first thing he does is start talking about the intellect being a great source of knowledge. For whether I am awake or asleep, 2 plus 3 make 5, and a square does not have more than 4 sides. So he's like, okay, cool, I can prove things like in arithmetic with my rationality. And then he starts thinking about this idea of God. How do I know that God did not bring it about that there is no earth, no heavens, no shape, no size, but I just think that there is? And then he says, hold on. God is all good, so he wouldn't deceive me into thinking these things. And then he realizes, why is he making claims about God? Shoot, he must not have taken that idea out of his head. Starting all over, there could be an all-powerful deceiver God who would totally want to trick you into believing things. And this is how the evil demon argument begins. I will suppose not a supremely good God, the source of truth, but rather an evil genius, supremely powerful and clever, who has directed his entire effort at deceiving me. And this is the evil demon argument. It's possible that an evil demon is deceiving me right now into making me think whatever I think. And therefore, whatever I think right now could be false. So you can't trust your intellect as a source of knowledge, and you can't trust common sense as a source of knowledge. That's how Meditation 1 ends. Meditation 1 ends with Rene Descartes having said he doesn't know anything at all, and he's going to question absolutely everything. And then Meditation 2 begins with him realizing that he just started from scratch and now doesn't believe anything. I have persuaded myself that there is absolutely nothing in the world, no sky, no earth, no minds, no bodies. Is it then the case that I too do not exist? But doubtless I did exist if I persuaded myself of something. So this is how the I think therefore I am begins. If there is an evil demon or an evil deceiver or someone who is supremely powerful and supremely sly, who is always deliberately deceiving me, then too, there is no doubt that I exist if he is deceiving me. Let him do his best at deception. He will never bring it about that I am nothing, so long as I think that I am something. Thus, after everything has been carefully weighed, it must finally be established that this pronouncement, I am, I exist, is necessarily true every time I utter it or conceive it in my mind. So now we've gotten the main I think therefore I am clause. He is saying that even if he is the victim of some evil deceiver, he's being deceived. There must be something to deceive if there is a deceiver, so he must exist. A thinking thing must exist. He is a thinking thing at minimum. Even if this is a dream and so it's not real, then he is being tricked into thinking it's real. Again, the opportunity to be deceived proves that there is a thing there to be deceived. The fact that he is thinking, that he is doubting, that he is wondering, that he is potentially deceived is proof that he exists. And so there we have proof of something undoubtable. So this is the first thing that Rene Descartes has proven, certain, clear, and distinct, without a doubt. And the last main part of the second meditation is the wax argument. In the wax argument, we are going to get a discussion of something physical, one physical thing, and then we're going to realize that through time, by moving it closer to the fire, all of the things about it are going to change. So what he's going to do is take a specific piece of wax. Let's take this commonly believed to be most distinctly grasped of all, namely the bodies we touch and see. Not bodies in general, but one body in particular. Let us take, for instance, this piece of wax. It has recently come from the honeycomb. It's not yet lost its honey flavor. It retains some of the scent. So he goes on to explain how he's knocking on it and it makes a certain sound. As he moves it closer to the fire, it is becoming liquid and hot. You can hardly touch it. And now it no longer makes a sound. Does the same wax remain? And he realizes that the senses are not a source of knowledge, but instead it's his faculty of judgment. It is the mind that is judging that the wax has this shape or this size or this solidity or this temperature. And as the thing in the world changes, it's the mind which judges that it is changing and it is now this other thing and now it is this other thing. So here's how meditation 2 ends after a really deep discussion of the wax. Lo and behold, I returned on my own to where I wanted to be. For since I now know that even bodies are not, properly speaking, perceived by the senses or by the faculty of imagination, but by the intellect alone, and that they are not perceived through their being touched or seen, but only through their being understood, I manifestly know that nothing can be perceived more easily and more evidently than my own mind. So meditation 2 ends with a discussion and reflection of the wax argument. And the main point is that Rene Descartes has proven that he exists, that he is a thinking thing, and that his thinking thing, the mind, is what gets us to all of the facts. So what is a good, reliable source of knowledge? It is the faculty of judgment available to the human mind.